ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਪੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ। Thank you, Sangat Ji, for joining the Sunday Sangat of the Divine Light discourse. We've been blessed today with the Sangat. But a question I'd like to ask is, why do we join every Sunday for these discourses? Is it to create that spark within, to listen to the discourses, have that spark of motivation to get you through the week and slowly connect you to the divine? We can make as many changes as we want in our lives, but until we get that divine grace, the kirpa from the divine, no long-lasting change will be made. So before we start the discourse today, Sangat Ji, let's take a moment to beg that divine, to pray to that divine, that for the remainder of this session, that he blesses us with his divine grace and allows us to connect with him and to have conversations with him. Whoever you believe in, whether that be Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Guru Nanak, Ram, just take a moment now in silence and just do this ardas, prayer to the divine, that it can connect us to the one. So Sangat Ji, as Bhai Rishipal Singh Ji mentioned in the introduction, connect with your mantra throughout the discourse, whatever mantra that may be, whether that's Ram, Allahu, Vaheguru, the Mool mantra, Jesus, God, whatever mantra that you associate yourself with or connect with throughout the discourses, have that playing in your mind while you're listening. Have it on a loop over and over again. So Sangat Ji, today's discourse will be based on the Japji Sahib, Pauri 21 of the Japji Sahib. So it's been a few months since we've had our last discourse on the Japji Sahib. Approximately 2 months ago, I believe, Bhai Bahadur Singh Ji shared Pauri 20 with us, the essence of Pauri 20. So before we delve into today's discourse, I would just like to give a summary of some of the key concepts that we've explored in the previous bodies. So we started the Japji Sahib discourses with the Mool Mantar, the root mantra that was given to Guru Nanak Dev Ji by the Divine. And within this mantra, Guru Nanak Dev Ji tell us about some of the virtues of the Divine and some of those virtues that we can adopt in our own lives. So Ik Oankar, oneness, Satnam, truth, Karta Purkh, that the Divine is the creator, Nirpao, Nirvair, the Divine is without fear and he's without enemies. Akal Murat, the Lord is timeless. Ajuni, he's beyond birth and death. Sepang, the Divine is self-created, self-existent. Gur Prasad, these attributes and creating that divine union can only happen with Gur Prasad, the grace of the Divine. Adasat, from the beginning of time, the Divine was true. Jugadasat, throughout the 4 Jugs, Satjug, Treta, Dwapar, Kaljug, the Divine remains true. Happy Sat, the Divine is true in this current moment, right now. Nanak Hosi Pi Sat, Tan Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, the Divine will be true throughout time, forever and ever. So this was the Mool Mantar. It is said that the scriptures of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji are the expanse of the Mool Mantar. The Mool Mantar in essence is the summary of the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Another concept we discussed earlier on was Hukam, the divine order. So everything that happens in life happens due to this divine order. And the more we can follow and accept this Hukam, the divine order, the happier we'll be in our lives. In life, you want to go with the stream, with the current. The moment you start opposing this current, things become slightly more difficult. So always go with the current, with the Hukam of the Divine. We also discuss false practices or rituals without intention. So things like going to Tirat with the wrong intentions. And we'll discuss some of this today as well in the discourse. Then later on, we started discussing the power of hearing, listening, and accepting, and the Suniya bodies and the Manna bodies. So body 21 starts to bring these concepts together now. So the concept of Hukam, some of these false practices, the power of hearing, listening, and accepting. So before we start the discourse, Sangaji, let's just listen to the recitation of the 21st body of the Japji Sahib. Satnam Sri Vaheguru Sahib Ji, Tirath Tap Daya Dat Dan, Je ko pavai tilka maan, ਸੁਣਿਆ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਮਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਭਾਓ ਅੰਤਰਗਤ ਤੀਰਥ ਮਲ ਨਾਓ ਸਭ ਗੁਣ ਤੇਰੇ ਮੈਂ ਨਾਹੀ ਕੋਏ ਵਿਣ ਗੁਣ ਕੀਤੇ ਭਗਤ ਨਾ ਹੋਏ ਸਵਾਸਤ ਆਥ ਬਾਣੀ ਬਰਮਾਓ ਸਤ ਸੁਹਾਣ ਸਦਾ ਮਨ ਚਾਓ। ਕਵਣ ਸੁਵੇਲਾ ਵਖਤ ਕਵਣ, ਕਵਣ ਥਿਤ ਕਵਣ ਵਾਰ। ਕਵਣ ਸਿਰੁਤੀ ਮਾਹੁ ਕਵਣ, ਜਿਤ ਹੋਆ ਆਕਾਰ। ਵੇਲ ਨਾ ਪਾਈਆ ਪੰਡਤੀ, ਜੇ ਹੋਵੈ ਲੇਖ ਪੁਰਾਣ। ਵਖਤ ਨਾ ਪਾਇਓ ਕਾਦੀਆ, ਜੇ ਲਿਖਣ ਲੇਖ ਕੁਰਾਨ। ਥਿਤ ਵਾਰ ਨਾ ਜੋਗੀ ਜਾਣੈ, ਰੁੱਤ ਮਾਹੁ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ। ਜਾ ਕਰਤਾ ਸ੍ਰਿਠੀ ਕਉ ਸਾਜੇ, ਆਪੇ ਜਾਣੈ ਸੋਈ। ਕਿਵ ਕਰ ਆਖਾ ਕਿਵ ਸਾਲਾਹੀ, ਕਿਉ ਵਰਣੀ ਕਿਵ ਜਾਣਾ। ਨਾਨਕ ਆਖਣ ਸਭ ਕੋ ਆਖੈ, ਇਕ ਦੂ ਇਕ ਸਿਆਣਾ। ਵੱਡਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਵੱਡੀ ਨਾਈ, ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਕਾ ਹੋਵੈ। ਨਾਨਕ ਜੇ ਕੋ ਆਪੋ ਜਾਣੈ, ਅੱਗੇ ਗਿਆ ਨਾ ਸੋਹੈ। ਵੱਡਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਵੱਡੀ ਨਾਈ, ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਕਾ ਹੋਵੈ। ਨਾਨਕ ਜੇ ਕੋ ਆਪੋ ਜਾਣੈ, ਅੱਗੇ ਗਿਆ ਨਾ ਸੋਹੈ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। So Sangat Ji is quite a long body, so what we'll do is we'll create two parts of the discourses. So this part today, part 1, will go up to Sat Sohan Sada Manachao, and then we'll discuss the rest in another discourse. So the first two lines, Tirat Tap Daya Dat Dan Je Ko Pave Tilka Man. So Tirat, places of pilgrimages. Tap, Dhyan, Tapasya, meaning intense focus on the divine. Daya, compassion. Dat Dan, giving to charity, charitable work. Tirat tap daya dat dan, je ko pave tilka man. These acts of going to pilgrimages, giving to charity, being compassionate, these by themselves will only give you a fraction of merit, of divine merit. Til meaning a fraction. So what we're saying here, Sangaji, it's not bad to go to pilgrimages. However, your intention is everything. Going to these places of pilgrimages and going to these sites, these holy sites, it's a good thing. However, your intention is going to be the multiplier of this merit. If you go with ego, bad intentions, then the result will be such. What you'll receive from these acts will be a fraction of what you should be getting. If you go with pure love and devotion for the divine, then this multiplier increases. So going to Tirat is a good thing. Doing acts of charity is a good thing. Being compassionate is a good thing. And doing tapasya and dhyan and doing meditation is a good thing, but with the right intentions. In our previous discourses, we've heard a lot about intentions, and one of the examples I can think of is the example of Harnakash. So someone who did a lot of meditation, a lot of dhyan, but his intentions were wrong. His intentions were based in ego, about his power, the power he wanted over people. And this is why, even though he achieved spiritual heights, in the end, that complete divine union wasn't there, and the ego ended up destroying him in the end. So when I was reading this body, I started to ask questions to myself. Why do I do seva? Seva is a divine blessing. But why do I do seva? Is it for enlightenment? Is it for worldly riches? Yeah, plenty of stories that people do seva and they get worldly rewards for it too. Is it to show others how spiritual I am? Or is it purely for the love of the divine? And being honest, it could be a mixture of all these things. So our efforts can be tarnished by our intentions. So it's essential, Sangatji, that we constantly reflect inside on why we are doing things, why we are doing seva, why we are giving to charity. Is it just a chore? Are we just ticking a box on a list? Is it to make other people think good of us and think how spiritual we are? This constant internal reflection is essential in spirituality. As it is told in these lines, our intention is the multiplier. If we are driven by ego, we're not going to expect the result that we should get. An example I have in my own life, Sangatji, would be on the weekends I used to go to an asthan. So an asthan is the place of the divine, the place where the guru is, a temple, a gurdwara. So every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I would go wake up early in the morning, go to the asthan, do my prayers in the morning and return back home. After attending these weekend programs for a couple of years, I was blessed with some seva. Initially, when I was told of the seva I was doing, I was over the moon. I was so grateful to the divine for blessing me with this seva. However, over time, this became the norm, the new norm. And I stopped appreciating the seva that I was doing. So initially, I started out from a place of immense gratification, immense gratitude. And over time, this seva became a chore for me. My intentions shifted. So often on the Friday evening, I'll be complaining, oh, I have to wake up so early in the morning and go and do this seva. And over time, what was first a blessing to myself and how grateful I was initially turned into a chore for myself. And after a little while, this seva was then taken away from me. So even if you are blessed with seva now, Sangat, you're blessed with the privilege of being able to give to charity, be compassionate. Remember, these are all blessings from the divine and they can be taken in an instant. This leads me on to types of ego. So there are a few types of ego, but the subtlest form of ego, the most conniving form, the most manipulative form, is what we call the suksham homme. It is such a subtle form of ego, Sangatji. It knows your every next move. It knows your darkest secret and works against you at all times. And it's so sly, you're not even aware that it's affecting you. You could think to yourself that you're making good progress on the path of spirituality. But then that's when it will attack. When you're least expecting it, this suksham homme, this subtle ego, will come and attack you. An example of this could be, I heard from a friend who had gone to Mecca and completed his Hajj. So those Muslim brothers and sisters that go to Mecca, complete their Hajj, they can be often referred to as Haji, out of respect. So my friend, Haji Muhammad, so after he had gone to Mecca, completed his pilgrimage, he had then returned and people started calling him by the name of a Haji. And over time, this started getting to him a little bit. He started thinking, okay, yeah, I'm now someone respected. I'm someone who people look up to because I'm a spiritual person, I'm a man of the divine. But this ego will then destroy all of your spirituality without you even knowing. By the time you realized, is too far. It's the same with being Amritari. People often think, oh, this person's Amritari, that they're above someone else, but this is not the case. Taking Amrit, being initiated into the Khalsa, is the absolute first step. Even an example from my own life, as soon as I had taken Amrit, there would be people coming up to me in the Gurdwara saying hello to me that would never speak to me before. And after a while, sometimes you have to check yourself. You start thinking, oh, have I become someone now? Have I become someone on this path of spirituality? But this is why internal reflection is essential in spirituality. We have to keep on reflecting on our actions within. So this path of spirituality, Sangaji, is for everyone. All we have to do is drop our ego. The examples from Gurbani are the stories about Ajamal, someone whose whole life was plagued with sin. A saint then met him and told him to name his son Narayan, which is another word for the divine God. So throughout his life, he would say, call out for his son, Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. But it was only in that last moment when Ajamal dropped his ego and called for his son, but instead called for the divine. And it's that moment when he dropped his ego, he connected with the one and was liberated. So all we have to do is drop our ego. I once asked a saint, how can we stop this suksham homme? How can we stop this subtle form of ego when we are committing acts of good? Because often you'd give some money to charity, you'll do some seva, you'll help someone, and inside you get that feeling, yeah, I've done a good deed, I've done something good. And this, in a way, is a form of suksham ego. So the saint said to me, it's essential to read your scriptures, read the Gurbani, and understand that everything that has been given to you in your life is because of the divine. It's only through divine kirpa, divine grace, that you're able to do all these acts of good. I once heard an example from Miskinji, who's a great scholar and a spiritualist. And he said, imagine a dark room, and in that room there's one window. Through this window, the sun shines, and the rays of the sun enter this window. If I'm standing inside this room and I want to light a certain dark corner of this room, I have a mirror which I can then reflect the rays of the sun onto this dark corner and give it light. In this example, the rays of the sun is the kirpa of the divine. It's the divine creation. Without this light, I could turn the mirror up, down, left, right, but there will be no light. It's only with the divine rays that I can then shine light onto the dark corner. So every good act that we do in our lives, every bit of spiritual prayer, meditation we do is only because of the kirpa of the divine. It's because the divine has allowed us to do so. So Sangatji, intention is key. And a funny story from Gurbani is of Bhagat Annaji. So Bhagat Annaji was a spiritualist, was a Bhagat of the divine. And their sole purpose on earth was to connect with the divine and really absorb themselves in divine love. So Bhagat Annaji would often walk past a mandir, a temple, and they will see a Brahman, a spiritualist who would be worshipping God in the form of a statue, an idol. So every day Bhagat Annaji would go past this statue and look at the Brahman and think, this is how we achieve divine union. So they would go every day to the Pandit and ask him, can you also give me a stone so I can perform this worship? So every day they would go over and over again asking the Pandit the same question. The Pandit got fed up. He got fed up of Bhagat Annaji asking him over and over again. So what he thought to himself was, I need to get rid of him now, so I will just give him any old rock and just tell him to worship this. So the next day Bhagat Naji came, he got any old rock from the floor and gave it to Bhagat Naji and said, this is your God, worship this and don't ever come back. So Bhagat Naji was very pleased with this. He takes the rock and every single day he'd worship it with pure divine devotion. He will then give food to the rock. And at one stage, Bhagat Naji said, I'm not eating this food until the divine themselves comes and eats this food. I'm not going to eat at all. And such was the purity of the divine love Bhagat Naji had. After a few days, the divine manifested themselves, blessed Bhagat Naji, and ate the food. After all this, the Pandit is looking at Bhagat Naji and thinking, what have I been doing wrong? For many years and years, I've been devoted to my meditation, my service to the idol, and I haven't received anything. Bhagat Naji, after a few days, got this divine blessing from the Lord. The difference was the intention. One was acting just out of a chore, just as a ritual. The other was doing it out of pure love for the divine. And this is captured in Bhai Gurdas Ji's Vara. So Bhai Gurdas Ji says, Brahman puje devte tanna go chadavan ava. A Brahman would worship gods, where Tanna would gaze to his cow. Tanne dittha chalit eh puchhe Brahman aakh sunava. On seeing his worship, Tanna asked the Brahman what he was doing. Then, Thakur di seva kare, jo ichhe soi phal pave. I'm doing service of the Thakur, the divine, replied the Brahman. Tanna karda jodadi, मैं पी देह एक जे तुद पावे. Tanna requested, O Brahman, if you agree, could you give me one too? Patthar ek lapet kar de tanne no gail chhadawe. The Brahman rolled a stone and gave it to Tanna and thus got rid of him. Thakur no naval ke Chai ruti le bhog chadawe. Tanna bathed the Thakur and offered him bread and buttermilk. Hath jod minat kare, peri pepe bahut manawa. With folded hands, falling at the feet of the stone, he begged for his service to be accepted. Hopi mo na juthal sa, tu rutha main keh na sukhawa. Tanna said, I will also not eat. How can I be happy if you are annoyed? To the divine. Gusai partak hoye, roti khaye chahe mohe lava. Seeing this, the true devotion, God was forced to appear and eat the bread and buttermilk. Pola pao gobind milawa. In fact, innocence like that of Tanna makes the sight of the Lord available. So, Tirat tap daya dat dan jeko pave tilkaman. Doing acts of charity, doing immense tapasya is only of use if you have the right intentions behind it. So the next line, Sunaya manaya manakita pao antargat tirth malanao. So these two lines here, Sankaji, pretty much sum up the whole of spirituality. Sunaya manaya manakita pao. Sunaya, to listen. Manaya, to accept. Manakita pao, and with love and humility in your mind. Antargat tirth mal now. Cleanse yourself with the name of the Lord in the tirth that is within. So last week, Bhai Rishipal Singh Ji mentioned that when you're starting in spirituality, don't worry about techniques, about which technique should I use to meditate. Baba Jaswant Singh Ji would often say, if a person is hungry, they're not going to ask on how they should eat the food, they'll just pick up the food and eat it. In the same way, Sangat Ji, is all about love. However, in these two lines, Guru Nanak Dev Ji have given us a technique. Surya Manya, Manakita Pao. Like we referred to the Surya and Manya bodies earlier, listen. Listen to the divine message. The Gurbani, the prayers, the Quran, the Bible, Manya. Then then accept it and apply it in your life. And do this with humility and love in your mind. Manakita Pao. And through doing this alone, the filth that is on the tirat inside within you will be cleansed. So again, I asked a saint on how can we develop this inner love? How can we develop this inner love for the divine? And they said to me, as you're reading Gurbani, as you're reading your scriptures, some lines will just pop out at you and just really resonate with you. As these lines appear, listen to them. What is this line saying to me? What is this line from the Gurbani saying to me? And then apply this. Spend a week, spend a month applying this in your life. Then over time, keep doing this. And slowly, this love will start to manifest. With the blessings of the divine, of course. The divine is looking for every opportunity to bless us, Sangaji. We just have to be ready. And we can only do this once we clean the filth that is inside of us. For example, if you have someone who's addicted to drugs in front of you and you have £100, if you give the drug addict £100, they're most likely to just spend it on drugs and alcohol. However, if that same person has been working themselves, improving themselves, have given up their addictions, if you then give them £100, they're more likely to make good use of that money. So in the same way, Sangaji, the divine is looking for every opportunity to bless us. We just have to be ready. We just have to put in this groundwork initially. So Sunaya Manya Manakita Pao Antargat Tirth Malanao Sab Gun Tere Main Nahi Koi. So again, Guru Nanak Dev Ji saying, all the virtues, all the gun in this world are all yours, my divine, and none are mine. It's going back to that same example of the light, the rays of the light entering the room. Anything good that you do is only because the divine has allowed it to happen. Vena gun kite bhagat na hoye. So without virtue, there is no devotional worship. So very recently, I actually asked Rishipal, I was like, what's the point of doing all this seva when people still don't give up their egos? They're doing these massive projects, they're doing all this work, but they're still not giving up their ego. Their ego is massive. So whether you have ego or not, being in the right place, in a place where seva, sangat, and simran is going on, you are more likely for that Shabad to penetrate and destroy your ego. So it's going back to the same story as Jamal. A life full of sin, but in the end, he was in that environment where he had met the saint. The saint had then told him to call his son Narayan, and he's repeating that over and over again. And in the end, because of this association with the saint, he was liberated in the end. So you have to be in the right environment for success, Sangaji. And finally, Swasta Art Bani Brahmao Sapta Sohan Sada Manachao. In these two lines, Guru Nanak Dev Ji are bowing to the divine, the one divine that gives us all of these blessings and all of these gifts. So Sangaji, intentions are key, and applying the Guru's teachings, the divine's teachings in your life is key. So in this week, let's pick one. Let's pick one message from the divine, one message from your scriptures that you'll be looking to implement in your life. spend the whole week on it. Doesn't have to be anything big, it could be one small thing. But like we say, changing the trajectory of a boat by 1 degree can change its direction altogether. So Sangaji, with this brings me to the end of the discourse. I hope you all enjoyed it. Keep blessing all the Sangat, keep blessing us so we can continue to do this seva on your feet. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.